I'm Bracken from ITF Gaming, and I'm speaking to Antoine from Ubisoft Montreal. To give our viewers a bit of background, what's your role at Ubisoft Montreal, and how long have you been working with them?
So I've been working at Ubisoft Montreal for 8 years now. Started there when I was 20 years old, 29 now. So it's pretty much all I know, but it's good. So I started there in the playtest department, which is where we do research with consumers, which is really, really interesting. It's something that Ubisoft does really well to make sure that players come in and play the game before they come out, and they're really, really up to par with their expectations, as well as that they're able to play them, understand the gameplay really well. But now I've been I've been making trailers for about 4 years, and my current role is on the production team of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag as a realization director. So it's mostly involved with trailers within the production. So I basically try to make sure that the trailers we release in the lead up to the release of the game fit with the mood and the look of what the final game will be. So I try to make sure that all of that is consistent and that we showcase the game in its best light.
So you said you were a playtest director?
Not a director. I was in playtest. I had a few roles. I started out as a playtest observer. I was, write down notes and basically observe the players' behaviors while they were playing Assassin's Creed 1 at the time, actually.
So you were involved with the playtesting of Assassin's Creed 1?
Yeah, at the time, yeah. That was a long time ago, 2006 and 2000, between 2005 and 2007, I guess, yeah.
So from where Assassin's Creed started, have you been, did you ever expect it to be as big as it is now?
I think so, man. To be honest, the beautiful thing about Assassin's Creed 1 was at the time it was a very kind of it was a simple game, I think we could say, but it was also really bold and ambitious one, and I think you could tell that the foundations were really strong. And of course, as soon as Assassin's Creed 2 came out, then it was obvious that it was just going to take off in a really massive direction. And I think so far it's just kept getting bigger and better.
Okay, and since Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and 3, and obviously the spin-offs in between, have all featured Desmond as a real-world character. Do you think the series is going to be able to maintain the momentum without him as such?
Well, I think it will. And I think that the new setting, the present-day setting, is actually going to launch a second momentum, if that makes sense. So I don't know if you're familiar with Black Flag and what we've already said about this, but basically, you're playing yourself now, playing Edward in this case. So I think I think it might just give it a second wind. Not that it was out of breath, but really, I think it's an opportunity to kind of go into a really cool direction.
And do you think working within Abstergo, because I've been reading about this, and you're working and sifting through all the old memories and stuff. So do you think working with that is going to give you a different perspective on the whole Assassin's Creed universe?
That's the perfect word to describe it. It's how I've been explaining it to people who haven't really read up on it. We're not ignoring what happened before with Desmond, obviously, because we can't disregard it. It's too important in the present-day setting. But exactly what you said, we're showing a different perspective. And it's going to be really interesting for fans to see what they know from a different angle. But what's great is that for people that haven't played the games before, it's going to be less jarring to kind of jump into it, because it's sort of a new beginning in a way. And it's absolutely what you said. It's a different angle, sort of a really interesting perspective on the thing, and I think fans are going to really appreciate that, because they'll see what we sort of put in that's in relation to what happened in the past, but with a different spin. It's going to be great, yeah.
So do you think that's, you said it's going to be easy for new players to pick up?
Yeah.
And it's going to be very easy. It's going to be brilliant for old players to
absolutely
continue it. But do you think is the game going to be very focused on establishing itself away from the character story arc that's Desmond had, or is it going to be are there going to be lots of references to Desmond's?
I don't want to. Yeah, okay. Well, I don't want to go into detail too much because it's obviously present day. It's such for fans, especially who've been following the game series so far. it's an important part of it. It's a massive part of it, and we're not revealing too much. That's the long and short of it. So for sure, fans will, I think, pick up on a lot of stuff that other people may not. Other players may just ignore or sort of not understand or disregard, even maybe. But so there's just going to be more meat for the people who play the game so far.
Okay, so moving back to the game itself, Assassin's Creed 3, the naval combat was obviously one of the most praised features of the game.
Yeah.
It was obviously, lots of people enjoyed it, lots of people thought it was very innovative and interesting. How do you think it's going to expand it? Because you've said, like it's been said, that the game Black Flag, Assassin's Creed 4, is going to be 40% naval.
Yeah.
So how has it been expanded to make that a big enough part of the game that it's going to be able to fill that role?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the story, the 40% the story division is about 60% land and 40% naval. But really, if you complete the whole thing, if you're that type of player where you want to get all the achievements and trophies and 100% everything, it's going to be about 50-50. The fact is, it's still Assassin's Creed, but now we have a pirate kind of sheen onto it. So the world is really different this time around. So we still have the Assassin's Creed classic in cities. We have Nassau, that's a pirate haven. We have Kingston, that's a mountainous kind of city. But the most interesting one, I think, for fans is going to be Havana, in that it's a very European kind of Hispanic city at the time. Very much of a love letter to Venice and cities of Assassin's Creed 2. So, I mean, fans of those will just love Havana. But then when you take the rest of the world, what we have is a massive Caribbean Sea open world. And it's peppered throughout the world are about 50 unique locations, ranging in scale from a small coconut island with 2 or 3 trees on it, with maybe a hidden treasure map or something, and then Mayan ruins and fishermen villages and plantations, underwater caves. So there's a massive variety of it, and so obviously we knew you were going to spend a long time on the water, so we had to really tweak the naval systems. Combat is much is very simplified and really accessible. You know how in AC3 you sort of had to navigate menus to switch weapons. Now it's all it's a lot more simple. You can actually see it on the floor at rAge with the hands-on demo. There's a naval fort battle, and you can see it for yourself how that feels. So because we knew there was going to be a lot of it, we really tried to give it all we could. You have a bunch of new enemy types that you can fight, the enemy ships. Boarding is a massive, massive improvement. I mean, it's so impressive. The technology running behind it is nuts. I mean, it just blows my mind. And so what's crazy about all of this is everything that I just described to you is seamless. All those things you can do with Edward, running or walking or sailing around, jumping off his ship onto an island and back on a ship to another island, or a boarding sequence, with a naval combat. All of this is in one go, and so I think we really did a good job of that. In that we're not constantly cutting you off while you're going through this massive adventure.
Do you think, since some of the Far Cry 3 team helped with the game, do you think very much that's the whole island setting? Do you think it was beneficial to have someone that's had people that helped with it?
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't say that about the setting. So the setting is such an important part of Assassins. I think we have our own reasons to pick them. In that the franchise so far has been very much, one of the core tenets has been very much about the fight for freedom and fighting against oppression, and empires are always kind of fighting the man, and so the Assassins versus Templars, and we put them somewhere in the world and history, and so we play with that. And you'll see with the story that the pirate setting is very appropriate. I think people were surprised when we announced the pirate game, but then if you do a bit of research on Wikipedia or look into it, you'll see that the setting is just perfect, and it completely fits what's been established so far with other eras and other places in the world. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned Far Cry, because we do, of course, members of teams kind of go back and forth between some projects and franchises when games ship, and we certainly did get a few Far Cry people, but we took a really big, like a few pages out of the Far Cry 3 book, if I can say it like that. In that, one of the things that Far Cry 3 did really well was to make sure that all of the activities you had going on around the world, everything that happened served a purpose. Everything you did had a purpose. It wasn't just there for no reason. So the crafting, the hunting, all of that, we were very much inspired by it. And so you'll find this again in Black Flag, very much so. Loot and treasure was a huge part of the pirate lifestyle. So we embraced that, full on. And I think people will recognize that from Far Cry.
So do you think, like you speak about treasure and loot being a very important part, so you think it's going to be very beneficial for the players to now explore this new archipelago of islands and look around, explore? So you think the rewards they get from that are going to factor very much into providing a very enjoyable gameplay experience?
Well, yeah, absolutely. The Pirates Fantasy is just undeniably fun. Everybody wants gold. And we've all seen the Goonies. There's nothing quite like a pirate treasure map and treasure hunt, and you have those in the game. That's just so it's just, that aspect of it, of like being titillated by something you see in the distance and just kind of want to reach for it and finding a treasure map. Well, yeah, obviously I'm going to go look for that treasure now. I gotta find it. Find all the treasure I can. In a very selfish way, you're going to become that. But what that plays into is that you can customize everything pretty well. You can customize your character. Its weapons and armor and stuff like that, as well as the jackdaw. The jackdaw that's your ship. We consider very much its own character, and so it's going to be up to you to decide how it sort of evolves throughout this adventure. Customizing the sails, the cannons, and the cannon types, the number of cannons and things like that, and so everything comes back around and plays into that. So I think people will find that that everything is sort of used.
You mentioned the jackdaw and customizing the amount of cannons, the amount of cannon types.
Yeah.
Will it be beneficial in some cases to have less cannons? Or will it affect the handling of the ship at all?
Sure. Well, that's actually a really good question. I think what you I don't know how to quite approach it. So some different enemy types have different kind of behaviors. Mm-hmm. And one thing you want to do that's really important when you're facing a certain enemy type is that you have the right weapons. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you don't blow up the ship before you get to board it. Or, you have the choice. If you want to blow it up and just sail away, you can. You can just sink it to Davy Jones' locker and just kind of sail away, and that's fine. So, of course, you have to be mindful of, when the ship's health is kind of going down. If you really want to board it and kind of, take over the ship and kill the captain and send that ship to your fleet or sink it or take its cargo, then you have to be mindful of that. So, and that, I think, strategy is going to come into it a little bit, and it'll be up to you to sort of use the different cannon types that we have, to their right, in the right way, and also dosage, I guess, right? If you just keep shooting cannons at it, it's just gonna explode.
Onto the narrative, into the more story-based elements. Desmond and Connor were both quite criticised for being sometimes flat and static characters,
right?
Not much growth. Do you think that's any particular effort in made sure that Edward doesn't get criticised for the same elements?
Well, to be honest, I think all of our characters are sort of just different. In terms of Connor, I gotta say, I sort of disagree. I think he had some qualities to him that were both negative and some positive, and I think it depends how you take it personally. But anyway, Edward, look, I don't want to tell you too much, but personally, so here's the thing. Edward is going to be walking sort of a fine line between being a pirate and an assassin, because of course, there are some areas where they sort of overlap and others where they don't. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And so that's going to be a really interesting part of how Edward's story sort of kind of evolves and his path throughout that story. I'm not going to tell you much more than that because I want people to discover it for themselves because it's a really huge part of the game, and again, our fans are really into our stories. But I like to think, and that's my personal opinion, having seen the game and played it and worked on it, I'd like to think that, you know how Ezio is sort of a fan favorite? Mm-hmm. I think maybe Edward might become one. So hopefully I'm right.
And so far as the gameplay is concerned, back to the gameplay.
Yeah.
The stealth elements are something that Assassin's Creed always like. You were always walking the line between stealthy and full of action.
Sure.
But you never really had a dedicated crouching or cover system.
Right.
Do you think the addition of that will very much add to the gameplay?
Well,
add to the stealth-based gameplay?
Right. So, I honestly think that the reality of it's a game design thing that I think maybe a lot of people talk about the crouch, and I personally don't think it's really necessary. I don't think it's a feature per se. That I think it's a feature that's associated with stealth, but that isn't necessarily necessary for stealth, if that makes sense. So you were totally right about kind of walking that line of action and stealth, and to be blunt, it's very much something that Black Flag does, in that he's a pirate as well as an assassin. A big, gigantic pirate ship is not a subtle thing, giant cannons just shooting at a fort is not a subtle thing at all. And so, of course, that kind of sort of what I was saying about the narrative and his kind of walking that line between the two sort of applies to gameplay as well. So we have a demo that we're showing on the stage later this afternoon. If you didn't see it yesterday, where it's basically an assassination mission, and that rings through throughout the game. But if you're trying to be stealthy with all of the tools that we give you, for example, the blowpipe, the new eagle vision, the stealth in the jungle elements, aerials, stealth, obviously, overlooking enemies and things like that. All of these elements work really well together. But of course, if you get caught, if you fail at being stealthy, then you just whip out your swords and your 4 guns, and you can be a pirate. So I think we sort of, I think with our brand and our game, we don't want to be, I think, punishing of poor stealth. So given those abilities and those abilities fitting with Edward's kind of charisma and character, I think is appropriate and necessary, sort of to avoid maybe frustration for people who are maybe as good at stealth or literally don't like it as much. So I think that if we offer sort of both options, it's just a richer experience. I think it's a richer game, and on top of it, I think it's beautiful that it fits with the character as well.
The notoriety system, it's been changed for the first time since Assassin's Creed 2.
Right.
How do you think this is going to benefit the game? Do you think it'll contribute to a more enjoyable experience? Not having things like posters.
Right. Well, I hope so, because it's like I was saying before about playtesting. We do extensive playtest, and every change we do, of course, we have to measure. And we've been testing Black Flag, for just about a year every week with players coming all over, all the time. And so I think that hopefully players will like it, and we'll find it enjoyable and fun. And we'll see. The jury's out, I guess, for now. But I think it's gonna win.
Personally, who's your favorite assassin out of the whole series?
Oh, stop it! Well, look, honestly, I'm not just saying that, but what I said to you before about Edward, being possibly a future fan favorite, I think he's well on his way to becoming mine. Yeah.
Lastly, if you were to choose the setting and time period for an Assassin's Creed location, what do you think you'd choose?
What are you trying to do? No, look, I'm going to tell you what I've told other people who've asked me a similar question, because you try to twist it into getting me to say stuff. I think the beautiful thing about about Assassin's Creed is we get to sort of go anywhere at any time, and there's such a wealth of possibilities for us, and we just need to be mindful of where we go, and when we do go, dedicate ourselves to it in story as well as gameplay and setting, and just make sure that it fits with what we've established before, that hopefully fans will like and discover, because I think it's a big aspect of it. We don't tend to choose the most obvious stuff, although you could argue pirate is a more popular choice, but I don't think anyone ever expected Italy as a setting, Renaissance, and so I think wherever we may go in the future, hopefully people will like, and but most importantly, I think that if and when we do, we'll do it right.
Peggy 18.
Now you're ready to sail for the Horn. Play, roll and go. The anchor's on board and the cable's all stored.
She fancies you, lad.
Dandy-ho. Come breast the bars, bullies, heave away.
Enjoy your wine and women, lad, for tomorrow we dance with death.
We'll be rolling her down through the bay. To me, rollicking randy dandy-ho.
These savage seas are filled with fortune and unknown dangers, which most men wouldn't dare face. But we are not most men.
Incoming fire!
We fight the enemies who defy us, and carve our legends in steel.
Cannons! Brace yourselves! Starboard, Edward!
For across this vast ocean, men fall as pawns, or gain infamy as pirates.